and I'm very pleased to be here, and it's really nice to be able to organise something like this for us producers and engineers. I mean, the goal of the producer series is to bring producers and engineers from overseas, like Romesh and Dave French last week, who can help us upskill. You know, there's a really high standard of production and engineering in New Zealand, but any sort of upskilling is really important, and you know, you can always learn. You know, I learned things from Dave French last week I just didn't know were possible. You know, and I've been doing this for 30 years, so it's a really, you know, I thought this sort of thing would be really important to help upskill producers and engineers working in New Zealand. Let's welcome Romesh Dodangoda, one of another Welsh producer. This is exclusively Welsh club for this producer series. It's been really nice to have some of my, although, you know, it's like between myself, you, and Dave French, we're not the typical looking Welsh people, really, are we? It's like, but we're all record producers working in Wales, and we're all self-taught record producers as well, which is quite an interesting sort of thing. None of us have done any courses or learnt formally, so we've kind of just taught ourselves. But that's something we'll discuss in a while anyway. Give you a bit of background on Romesh. Rom produces rock, pop, metal from his Long Wave studios in Cardiff. He also does regular sessions at Rockfield Studios, Montevalli, Abbey Road, Metropolis, and lots of other great studios. He's an expert in the rock and metal genre and has worked with a host of artists including Motorhead, Bring Me the Horizon, Funeral for a Friend, Twin Atlantic, Bullet for My Valentine, Lower the Atlantis, Silosis, Monuments, and probably about 3,000 others as well. I first got to know him when he was working with a lot of the new wave of Welsh rock bands, the Blackout, Attack Attack, Kids in Glass Houses, and his recent work includes mixing the Bring Me the Horizon live at the Royal Albert Hall release, which was with a full orchestra and choir, which is something we'll discuss a bit later today. I should probably mention the first time we actually spoke. Do you remember when it was? I was actually, it would have been 2005.
Right.
I was recording an album in Riga in Latvia, and I had this message on MSN Messenger. That's how long ago it was. And it said, "My name is Romesh Dodangoda. I'm a record producer in Cardiff, and you know, can I send you some songs to listen to?" And you sent me a couple of songs over, and I was like, "Holy shit, this sounds amazing!" And I was like, thinking you'd recorded it like Rockfield or something. And it was like, "So where did you record it?" And it was like in your parents' house.
Yeah.
Because that was your first studio, wasn't it?
I kind of, yeah. I mean, it's probably, yeah. I don't know, 17 years ago, I kind of started properly doing it, and I just basically built up some equipment. I got really into the recording side, and just set up a studio in the side of my parents, in the side of their house. They had no choice in it.
Because I remember you used to do drums in the sort of like there was a tiled foyer bit in the front.
It was the smallest drum room you could. I think it just fit the kit and the drummer. That was it. But it was it was tiny, but it did me well for.
But it did sound great, and I was like, I was really impressed, but also I was a bit depressed as well, because it was like I was in this beautiful studio, and it was like it was like enormous rooms, full SSL, and it was like, man, this stuff sounds really good, and it's like it made me feel really bad actually. But at least I was having a good time. I didn't have to stay at my parents' house. So do you want to give us a bit of background into why you became an engineer and producer, and rather than becoming a musician? Because I know you're a guitarist, and also what moved you into working on sort of heavier recordings and a lot of band work and guitar-based work? I mean,
I was in a band when I was a very long time ago, and it's how I kind of got into guitar music. Really, I picked up the guitar, and that was all I loved doing was playing guitar, and eventually joined a band, and for me, I was never that bothered about the whole gigging thing and like the actual being a band thing. I loved recording. I loved like going in the studio and like working with a producer on the songs, and like kind of seeing, okay, what can I do guitar wise to kind of do this and that, and that kind of sparked it for me, and that's kind of where the bug came from, and that's how I got really interested in it. And then I kind of decided, well, that's what I want to focus on. I don't really want to be in a band as such. So I just kind of, just started slowly kind of getting bits of gear, starting really small and learning how far I could push, that gear before I then got something else. And after a while, I kind of, had quite a lot of gear, and then I kind of decided, well, okay, I'm going to move this stuff into the side of my parents' house then, and I kind of just built a little studio in there, and it was tiny. It was boiling. It was it was just stacked full of gear towards the end of it, but it gave me somewhere to kind of do what I wanted to do, and I just spent a long time just learning how to get the sounds I wanted to come out the speakers, and
how did you entrust the bands to work with a kind of young producer who didn't have any track record?
I think I did a couple of bands probably for free, just to kind of to teach myself and learn what I was doing. And then what happened was I did a few of those, and then the phone started ringing because other bands had heard those and liked the sound of it, and it just kind of went from there really. And obviously you get the phone call and be like, oh, have you been doing this long? And you just blag it, like yeah, doing this for ages. And it just kind of happened from there. And then the more bands that did that, the band started getting a little bigger, and so I mean that's kind of where it all started.
We were talking with David last week about the art of the blag and how never to say no to a gig. And even if you feel that you don't have the ability to do it, you just got to say yes and just figure it out.
Yeah, there's plenty of times that happened.
I mean, what do you benefit by saying no? I can't do it.
Yeah.
No, the phone will never ring again.
Yeah.
But if you just say yes,
and you'll figure it out, and then that's you've got that skill for life, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, David was saying about the sort of like the first session you was thrown in to, it was like the band turned up with the biggest drum kit you'd ever seen. To this day, the biggest drum kit you'd ever seen. It's like you never recorded drum kit before. My one was going to Loco Studios with Loz Williams. Well, it was Loz Williams. I got there and the BBC said, do you want to do a session? And I said, could you use SSL? I said, yeah, no problem. Never touched one before. And got there and thinking, this system will know. And then Loz was there, and it was his first day as well. So we just kind of blagged it and figured it out. And it's like
good times.
You just kind of
get through it.
Yeah. And
the band doesn't know anything.
I think the difference now is that a lot of bands are much more aware of the process. They know what mastering is, they know what auto-tune is, they know what, if you're editing drums, you can't hide that shit anymore.
Yeah.
So I think you've just got to be open with, it's like, I'm editing.
Unless you have a secret screen.
Well, you have someone off, I do it as well, have someone off-site doing things, so you can be a bit more severe with things. And actually, Tarrant was my off-site guy for, until he moved over. I'm a bit stuck now because there's nobody left, even over here, so. But so I think the art of the blag is I think it's a key part to being a producer really.
It's just that whole self-confidence thing, isn't it? Yeah. It's just like
I think you need to be a certain personality type to be a producer. It's like but it's like you need a bit of ego and a bit of
Yeah, I think a lot about just being a producer anyway is being confident that you're going to get the result. So even if you're starting out, it's the same thing. You've got to just give it a go and
So I mean, carrying on from that, I mean, what do you think the traits are that enabled you to get a foothold in the industry, blagging aside? Because it's not just blagging, is it? It does require, but also, and would they be the same things for a young producer and engineer starting in the industry today? Do you think there's similar career paths, or do you think it's kind of different the way that we both started, say?
No, I think it still works this way. I mean, for me, it was, like I said, I basically kind of developed a sound in my early days, and then, after I did one band, the other bands would hear it, and then you'd get a call from them, and that's still a route, a really good route, to be honest. It's like, this, I think now, especially now, like a lot of bands tend to know each other, and they're all in these circles, and if one band comes in, just cut this song, and another band hears it and is impressed, then they're going to want to work with you. So I think it's definitely still that same way in.
Yeah. Just be good.
Just be good, yeah. And everything you do, make sure it's good, because you never know who's going to hear it.
Yeah. It's like, you know, every gig you play should be the best gig you've ever played.
I think even still, all these years on, there's records I make, and sometimes it'll surprise me who has actually heard a record that I may have thought, oh, maybe not so many people are going to hear it, and then I get a call from Finland and this band has heard it, and it's like, oh, we want to. So, you know, you always make every record as best as you can do it.
I mean, I guess with kind of like, you know, streaming and the way that people consume music being different, you know, I mean, I was always surprised about, you know, you get calls from crazy places, you know, and you know, it's you know, it's the reason I ended up in New Zealand. It's the reason we all ended up going to sort of, you know, like just traveling around the world making records, and it's like, and a lot of that is the way people consume music, and you just don't know, you know. There's records I've made that sort of that I haven't not liked very much that people love, and it's like, and you get a ton of work from it, and it's always surprising.
Like like the story I was on about genuinely happened. I did a record with a band who were really good, but they didn't have enough backing behind them at the time. But we made a really good record. But I had a call from a band down in, I think it was Finland, and they're like, oh, we've just heard this record, we really want to work with you, we love the sound of it. So I did their record, and then the record I was on about that I did, they just got signed the other day to Universal. So like, yeah, it all works out in the end.
Yeah. And yes, you're right. Just the key is just the quality of work.
Yeah.
You know, it's how, you know, you can have as much social media as you like. You can pay for advertising. You can market yourself as much as possible. But nothing beats word of mouth and a good quality of work. It's pretty much 90% of everything you ever get is from.
I think also in today's world, the way people who listen to music now, they, even if they don't know what production is, I don't think they kind of treat a band in their head as a real band unless it's got a good production and it sounds like their other favourite band. So I think you know, if you can offer bands like, look, you know, we can make this sound amazing and it's not going to sound like a little demo, you know, that's, you know, I think the general public kind of latch on to those bands with the really good sounding records, and because they just feel like a more genuine band rather than a little local band. You know what I mean?
It's like, you know, my mother always say to me, it sounds very professional.
Yeah.
Like, sounds like a real like a real band. You know, and it's like yeah, well, it is my job. Like, you know, it's like, you know, you wouldn't sort of, you know, you wouldn't go into, if you worked in a bank, you wouldn't go and say, you know, oh, you're a really good bank manager, aren't you? You're like a proper one. You know, it's definitely a sort of a strange kind of like, you know, it's a weird one, that. So, I mean, what do you feel are the most fundamental changes to the recording industry since you started? Because you've had, I'm a bit of a veteran at this. You know, you've kind of like bridged quite a, you know, the analog digital thing. You know, I guess it was right towards you were kind of the first generation of digital pioneers kind of thing, really.
So, I mean, I started doing a lot of stuff, a kind of hybrid of analog and digital. So I had first of all, it was an 8-track digital hard drive recorder, which was then slave to a computer, which you could only edit like 2 tracks at a time. So you're like continuously bouncing stuff back and forward to make it work. And then
what was the 8-track?
Fostex D80. It was like a rack mount thing. Right. And then I got 2 of them, so I could add 16 tracks then. But everything I mixed on an analog desk at the time. And I had loads of, like after a while, I had loads of like outboard gear, loads of compressors and stuff, and that taught me quite a lot about how to fit the main elements of a song onto as, you know, little tracks as possible, and also it was that whole thing. I mean, you know this about, you did the mix, you printed it to DAT, and that was it.
Yeah,
and it was done. There was
no recalls.
There's no opening it again next week.
Yeah.
It was like, so. You know, that was, you know, it was cool. I kind of missed that time. To
I mean, they're really good disciplines to learn.
To learn, yeah.
You know, I know when I transitioned from 24 track onto Radar and then onto Pro Tools, it was like Radar was fine because it was built for tape heads, you know, to rewind. Although I did struggle with a bit with instant rewind. I like that thinking time when you rewind in tape. And then going to Pro Tools, and then I kind of realised that I'd forgotten about all the cool things you could do with when you had to go to tape, the decisions you had to make, and you know, getting sounds, striping sounds down that worked. You know, no plugins. And I think, you know, and I started going back to a lot of those disciplines, and I think if you can learn on smaller formats. You know, I mean, a lot of the bigger albums I did were done on a Tascam 16 track. It's like you drums on 4 tracks kind of thing.
You're definitely right with the decision making, and that is something I still carry through to today. Like with multiple mic stuff, I sum them to one channel, I make the decision there and go for it. But yeah, you know, it was quite a different workflow. I mean, I remember when I eventually got 24 tracks. Like doing a vocal, you'd have, so with the way this machine worked, you had a track, but every track had 8 virtual tracks on it, and so you could have your vocal comp across them all. But then when you were doing the mix, you'd have to, like, if the verse was on virtual 1, you'd have to be tapping it to get to 8 for the chorus in time, and like all that stuff, and like you just look like an idiot doing this all through it. But yeah, you know, like now you've got endless kind of possibilities, but I still keep a lot of those disciplines. You know, still, you know, multiple mics and stuff, I still sum down, and I try not to, you know, with guitars and stuff, I don't want to be recording like 6 mics and not make a decision that you don't get anywhere doing that. So I still carry a lot of that stuff.
I mean, it's the curse. I'm sure when you're mixing, it's the curse of like the modern recording. You know, someone will send you you know, the guitar's a double track, but there's like 10 mics on each guitar.
I've said no to a couple of those because my creativity just goes out. I've lost the buzz to do this. You know,
lost the will to live.
Yeah. It's basically no one's made a decision on the guitar sound. And
I remember you did tell me once about an album you were sent to mix where the guitars were all like just clean guitars with like and the drums were just like drum triggers.
Yeah, I won't mention any names of the producer, but a pretty big producer in America sent me a record. He had already started mixing the record with the band, didn't like it, asked me to mix it, and sent me the multi-track, and I was like, this folder's pretty small. I was downloaded in about 10 seconds, and the drums were a MIDI file with nothing, and the guitars were just all DIs, and I was like, where's the rest of this? And yeah, you know, it's just.
So you had no idea what
I had no idea what it should sound like, and I called the producer back up and, you know, basically said, look, you're the producer. One of your core jobs is to decide the sound of this record, and yeah, we got it done in the end. But it was a weird one.
Yeah, it's just like it's kind of depressing when you get like stuff to mix and it's just there's like a million mics and no one's taking any trouble about what the phase is going to be. And
it is a couple of mixes that came in. I genuinely just said no because. You know, it was just like for every guitar part you do, you've got 10 faders or something, times by how many parts there are, you've got like 100 faders of guitars, and it's just like no one's made a decision here, and you know,
just laziness in it, wrong.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it is, and you know, I've always taken the attitude that if you were sending stuff out to another producer or an engineer. You know, it's kind of how you deliver your files or your multi-tracks, your files, is kind of like a reflection of you as a producer. And if it's like everything's marked audio 1 to 10, it's like, you know, how can the other producer respect you if you haven't even taken the trouble to kind of, you know, to try and make their job easier and you know.
At the end of the day, it's like if you're sending something you've done and say you know someone wants someone else to mix it, it's all in your benefit anyway to not, you know, to give it to them in a good way, because it's going to make you look good at the end anyway. You know, if the mix sounds great, then everyone wins. You know, so.
Yeah, but it's we could bang on about it for ages. Yeah, it's kind of it's basically, you know, just file management is really, really important.
Yeah.
So what do you think if you had to pick like 3 albums that you felt transformed your career? What do you think they would be?
Okay, well,
I tried to guess, and I could probably figure 1 or 2, but it was hard to figure out what the.
I mean, for me, there was a band that I worked with called Kids in Glass Houses, who are a pop band in the UK, and they were one of the. It was definitely one of the records that was important for me career-wise. I found them a long time ago. I knew some of them, and I heard these songs that they were doing, and I was just like, we have to record these. They were
a brilliant band.
Yeah. And I could hear the recording already, and I was like, right, we have to do this. And we did an EP, and then I think they toured it for 2 years or something. And Roadrunner, the big record label, signed them off the back of that. And then we did the album, which the band kept me on to do, called Smart Casual. And that was a big point for me, I think. That record did really well. And especially with the kind of music scene it was in, it was quite influential, to other bands and stuff. And yeah, that was definitely a big one for me. And
I remember you playing me sort of rough mixes in the car one night, in the days before you could drive, and I'd give you a lift places, and it was like, and it was just like, it was just incredible.
But that was also a record where some of the kind of legal stuff, dealing with the label, was new to me, and you helped me a hell of a lot through that. With advice and stuff. Just kind of dealing with the label and the budgets, and because I'd done that to a certain degree before, but this is on a much bigger scale. So yeah, you were definitely.
There was lots of phone calls and sort of because it is a minefield, that whole thing. I remember first coming to New Zealand to record, and we were discussing budgets, and I said, well, we should probably talk about points, and there was like a blank look on the label's face. I'm like, points, like producer points. So, no, we don't do that here. And I'm like, well, it's not. There's no one rule for one. That's how producers get reimbursed. And it's like, so it's and for a lot of young producers, there's no real understanding of how an engineer's fee differs from a producer's points, and it's like, and I think it's this stuff you need the knowledge, because without being able to secure your income stream, you can't secure a career in the job that you really want to do. And it's like, it's really important to be able to it's a cool ringtone, man. It's all right. Some harmonica, what's not to love, and it's just so it was quite interesting seeing you having to deal with all that side of it.
So that was an important one for a career point of view, and also learning a lot of the kind of all the other important stuff that you need to know to be a producer, like which you helped me on.
Dealing with labels, stuff,
and then I guess Funeral for a Friend was probably, doing those records was really big for me. I was a massive fan of the band anyway, and I got the call, and I thought it was a wind-up at first. I was like, who is this? But I did a record with them, and luckily, the band had a lot of trust in me, and I ended up doing another 3 albums with them after that. So those records I did were really important to me as well, because that also pushed me into another area, the kind of slightly heavier music, and I did loads of kind of records in that kind of genre then as well. So that one, and then I guess working on the Motorhead record was amazing, just because it's Motorhead. It was like one of the biggest rock bands in the world. It was like that was brilliant.
I remember swinging by your studio when Phil was doing some guitars, and he's got that. It's an armor-plated Mercedes with black.
It's a bulletproof BMW. Yeah.
BMW
with the Motorhead
number plate.
Yeah, number plate.
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know what you thought was going to happen to him. Who's going to try and assassinate him?
It's got the oldest mobile phone in the car.
Is that right? Yeah. There was. Can you tell the harmonica story? I could show some harmonica. That was kind of pretty funny.
You probably won't mind me telling it. Yeah. I did the Motorhead record, but I've also just done a fill from Motorhead's new record as well. We just recently finished it. And he was just, every day you go in the studio, I just hear the best Motorhead stories, and because obviously, proper rock and roll stories you get to hear.
Mostly unrepeatable, I'd imagine.
Most of them I can't even tell you again, yeah. not allowed to. But there is a good story. He was telling me that there was a point in the Motorhead set on one of the tours, and Lemmy would take a harmonica out of his jacket pocket and play this harmonica solo in the middle of the set. And one day before going on stage, Phil swapped the harmonica out of his jacket for a Mars bar. And so Lemmy goes on stage and reaches out. But every day was like that. It was just like a different story, and like, you know, it was amazing to do any recording with him. It was brilliant.
So, why do you think this has baffled me for a while as well? Why do you think Wales produces so many good rock bands? Because it's kind of crazy considering the population base, and you know there must be a reason for it. Is it the support network all the bands have? Is, you know, can you put your finger on why that is?
I think the support. I think it's definitely the way that the people are there. Like, everyone's very supportive of each other in the music. Like, everyone's really good friends. I know. I mean, I was speaking to the band that we're doing on the masterclass tomorrow, and I was just asking them, you know, about what are people like around, you know, in your scene? Like, are they supportive and stuff? And you know, he was like, you know, it is competitive to a certain degree, but I think in Wales, everyone's just really good friends and they help each other out. And I guess, you know, we had a run of really great bands come out, and it just made everyone think, well, if they can do it, we can do it, kind of thing.
I think there's certainly, you get a momentum. I remember, because I was the kind of the generation of bands before you know, sort of like Manic Street Preachers, Stereophonics, Catatonia, Super Free Animals, Gorkies, all those 60-foot dolls. You know, like, great selection of bands. And the first time in Wales where you could actually go into a bar and go into a pub, and you're surrounded by other bands who've all got major record deals and they're all releasing records and being successful. You know, and I think you know, and that, I think that didn't go away. I think there was just always that knowledge that bands could be.
I think it's also down to the fact that everyone kind of hangs out on the same streets, and you know,
It's a pretty
bands.
small.
So you just have to make friends with everyone. You know, it's like, I think that's a part of the reason as well. Everyone's just really good friends, and you bump into, like, even today, like, you can walk down the street called Womanby Street, and it's just full of people in bands. You know, the music industry.
And probably they all know you. That probably has something to do with it. You know, I've seen many pictures of you on a Friday night out in Cardiff, surrounded by bands and bottles of vodka. It's I'm sure that, you know, and you know, when I had Big Noise Studios in you know, it was a real hub for things, and I'm sure Longwave is a kind of similar to that.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's a hub for bands to sort of, you know,
it's just a
like
really
a gang.
Good, yeah, it's just a good community. I mean, I think there's also, you know, when definitely in Wales, when, you know, if one band gets big, they'll take the smaller bands who need a leg up on tour with them and help them out. You know, it's like, that's the kind of. You know,
I think in rock circles in general, there's a really good support network. Yeah. I do see here, in the rock community here, there is, you know, all day festivals, and there's like, you know, there does seem to be a camaraderie there. Maybe because there's so little support at radio here, and the bands kind of just like sort of trying to look after each other and look after themselves. You know, because it's you know, it's quite tough at rock radio here trying to get stuff on. Right. There's not many stations, and it's you know, and there's no BBC, there's no BBC producing. There's no sort of so it is a bit trickier. But something next. I've got one question here. As we went debate when to ask it. It just says, Oasis, why are you obsessed?
Because they're the best band in the world.
It's like literally, it's like, you know, it's like.
I'm obsessed with the band Oasis. So that's not a secret. I don't know. I guess it's because they were one of the first bands that I kind of picked up the guitar and learnt songs for, and their songs are just. I'll tell you one thing. It's they taught me how simple songs need to be. You know, and even, you know, I always say this to people who don't like Oasis, like, you probably know the words to all their songs there, and that's how great the writing is. But yeah, they're the greatest band in the world.
I mean, I even went to, when I picked it off the flat today, that the Liam Gallagher his album's playing, it's like, yeah.
No, I don't know, it's, half of it's probably nostalgia as well, but yeah, there's something about the music that just does it for me.
Is that one of the reasons you like to go to Rockfield and record?
Yeah, like Oasis did. Does anyone like Oasis here? Yeah. There you go. You're my friends.
I wonder if you want to watch Gallagher or somewhere the way you're going.
Yeah, like I use a studio called Rockfield in Wales quite a lot, where Oasis did Morning Glory there.
It's in the Oasis movie, isn't it?
It's in, if anyone's, in fact, if you like, you should watch Supersonic, because it's got loads of recording footage in there.
They've even animated the story where Noel attacked Liam with a cricket bat at Rockfield.
But there's footage of them letting off all the fire extinguishers in the studio as well, which is good.
And there's and footage of Liam singing, which is kind of thrilling.
There's footage. It's just a magical place, because one of my favourite records is done there, and even the piano, the Don't Look Back in Anger piano, is still there, and it sounds exactly the same when you play it. So, yeah, it's cool. I love stuff like that.
It's pretty much every producer I know's favourite studio.
Yeah.
Like me, you, Dave, Ringer.
It's not the most modern studio at all, but it's got a vibe, and I'd always pick those kind of studios really over kind of fancy places.
We were discussing it at the last seminar about sort of Kingsley, and it's run by the world's most eccentric man. And, it's just a beautiful place to record.
Yeah,
it's like,
brilliant.
It's where atmosphere is way more important than. I mean, the gear's great and everything works fantastically, but the atmosphere is just it just kind of feel it coming out the walls, and bands feel that, and artists feel that when they're in a room that's been.
And it's cool as well, because there's actually 2 studios on the site, so when you're in one studio, you always want to know who's in the other one, and you make friends with the band who's recording in the other studio, and you end up having a drink or whatever. But there's loads of they've also got these cool like echo chambers, and they're like real ones, so you can essentially, if some of you don't know how that works, you can be in any of the studios, and you can send a signal into a room that's completely somewhere else, and it's like a stone room or something, and there's a speaker in there which you can just record them. You can record the sound you're putting in, and there's 2 mics in that room, and you can then bring them back to the desk and record that, and you've got like a proper natural reverb there.
It's like a reverb send, but in the real world.
Yeah, it's like a reverb box, but real. So they've got a couple of those. And
which is your favourite one? I like the shiny white.
I like,
room.
That's what I like.
It just sounds immense.
Yeah. But
they've got a wood one and thing. They've still got the glass plates one. They used to own that.
I think
they used to have their glass plates hanging up in it.
They do, I think they do, yeah. But it's also little things that they've got, like they've got like a maintenance guy as well who's really good, and if something blows, I remember doing funeral for a friend, and we blew up. Well, I blew up about 3 amps in like an hour, and like you got someone there then to keep your session going. So like stuff like that's really important.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty special place. So, tell us about your setup at Longwave, because it's kind of like if I had to pick the world's most well-equipped personal studio, it would probably be Longwave. It's kind of crazy.
It's not a commercial studio. It's basically a studio that's set up for me. It's got all my personal gear in it. It's not set up for anyone else to use. I mean, I do have people I know sometimes going in there, but so it's based around an Audience ASP 8024 console. There's a lot of outboard. So there's like Chandler pre's, which Chandler's are my, the TG2 is my favourites. Lots of compressors. I've got a lot of like guitars and drums and a big collection of amps. For me, I like the idea of not being limited by what a band has. So if I can't get a guitar sound out of one amp, I'll just go, well, let's try this one. And there's basically an amp wall with all the heads in it, and then you can just go, right, let's try the JCM 800 and that's exciting for guitarists as well. You know, they love all that stuff. So yes, I mean it's got a control room there, then it's got a live room, but then there's also a room, is a B studio. The B studio is where I do vocals. One of the things I love over the last maybe 3 or 4 years is I like doing vocals in the same room with the singer. I find there's more kind of interaction with them, and you can, because I always find with singers they get the kind of bad deal because they have to kind of be behind a piece of glass and the band's all having a laugh. Yeah. When you turn the talk back on for a second, you hear everyone laughing and they don't know what's going on, and I always feel they feel a bit isolated. So after, you know, the last few years I set up Studio B as a kind of vocal room stroke, it's my mix room as well. But I do all my vocals in there, we're on headphones. There's obviously, it's my mix room, so there's monitors there as well, but I love doing vocals there because you can just turn around and speak to the singer and you can kind of hum melody ideas or whatever, you know, you haven't got to kind of go through this.
Do you ever use, just have the monitors instead of headphones?
I did a record with a band called Decades recently, and it's a really noisy track, and I wanted it to sound a bit chaotic, so I put the NS10s on full blast and I put an SM7 in front of them, and I was like, right, sing the song in front of them. Right. So it's all the bleeds coming in the mic, but I kind of wanted it to sound a bit kind of, you know, chaotic.
You haven't tried doing any sort of phase stuff where you flip
the
NS10s?
It always sounds weird when you're in the middle of them. I don't know. I don't like it.
I think control, you know, it's an old Annie Lennox trick. She did all her lead vocals in the control. I did it with James Bradfield on Lifeblood record. We did all the vocals in the control room with the 58.
Right.
Backing vocals, lead vocals, everything.
It's just so much easier to talk, and like, you know, you can just have a conversation with it. It's the same with guitarists and bass players. I don't like having them in the live room. I always have them next to me because you want to have a good time, and you know, there's times where you're not recording and you're just having a chat in the control room, and if the guitarist is just on his own next door, it's just like.
Have you thought about maybe getting like a bit of a Nashville setup where you've got an open room, so you
cool,
can have, you know, so you've got like, there is a separate room for where the drums are, but there's, you know, there's no glass behind the desk. You can just kind of walk back and forth. I was quite, and there's one of the Moloko studios in London's like that.
Right. The church.
Yeah, everything's really open plan, and you know, I kind of like that idea. I think it's it is really alienating. I hate having guitarists in a separate room.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work for me.
And the usual excuse is, I want to get some feedback.
Yeah.
But I think the communication is way more important than you know, and
it's having a good time as well. Like making records should be fun as well, and like, you know, you're not going to have much fun in a room on your own next to a really loud, you know. Well, maybe you would, I don't know. But yeah, still, I mean, that's the kind of main setup, and then I've also, the way that it all works is all the machines are also connected to each other via Ethernet. So I have an assistant engineer who works for me, and I've got quite a cool workflow in the way that I can finish, say, a drum track, and instead of all that time after you finish a drum track and you're waiting to do, you know, you've got to do the drum edit then and all that, as soon as the drum track's finished, the session will appear on my assistant's machine, and so he can edit that track while I can then start a fresh song, and it just cuts so much time out of the day, and it allows me to do loads of tracking. It's the same throughout the whole thing where we're recording with even with guitars, we finish a guitar track and then he can look at that while I'm doing another track, and it just makes so much use of time. So like, it's been a big time saver for me, and I get to do shorter hours and get loads done in the day. So
and I think, you know, there's a lot to be said for, like, you don't want to be burning through valuable studio time just editing drums.
No one wants to.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you know, I started doing once I started working in New Zealand, I started doing like running 24-hour sessions where I'll at the end of the day I'll upload to like somebody here. If I'm in Europe, I'll upload to somebody here, or if I'm here, I'll upload to somebody in Europe. So that, you know, it's like Tarrant would get many a late night phone call. I got some drum tracks and you saw, and you can't these backing vocals, but you come in the next day and that's ready to go. Yeah. So you can spend time with the artist and be creative. Yeah. You know, it's creative time rather than like sort of nothing's duller than watching somebody
Yeah.
move stuff around on screen. And,
I mean, it's not everyone has the luxury of having someone who's on hand to do that stuff, but it's definitely been worth it for me because, like you said, it allows me to spend time either talking to the artist or developing an idea that, I can do something else. No one wants to see, just to be watching someone edit, a drum track, So, it's been, that workflow is really good. And it also means that files can be passed anywhere. We actually have an MSO messenger that I can talk to my assistant. It makes that old sound. But yeah, so any files can just go anywhere. They can be accessed to any part of the studio. So it's really good for them.
I mean, I think one of the drawbacks I found to post Pro Tools recording is producers spending time staring at screens rather than interacting with the artist. It's one of the reasons I personally moved away from engineering and wanted to spend more time, being a musician again and being with musicians and spending time interacting, with the other musicians and the artists, because it's that's kind of the most important part. You're looking for that extra 25% that the artist doesn't know they've got in their abilities.
I do that a lot with guitars because I think drums I'm quite hands-on, I need to be at the desk because I'll usually do my really bad drummer talk, go and play this fill, and so I kind of need to be there. But guitars, I'll often take a back seat and I'll have my assistant engineer run the machine, and I'll just sit back because when you're doing guitars, sometimes if you listen to the same take over and over again, you kind of lose a bit of focus. But sometimes by sitting back a little bit, you're kind of listening to the whole piece a bit more rather than looking at the screen and going, oh, we need to fill in that bit there. And so, for those kind of things, I'll sit back and kind of work with the artist a bit more.
I mean, because you've got such a comprehensive setup, why do you choose to use other studios? Is there any particular reason for it?
Just to get out of the place.
Get out of the place, yeah.
No, I mean, every studio's got different sounds and, different rooms. It's mainly for drums I go away because, I mean, my studio, I do loads of drums there, but if I've got the budget and I want to do something different, then I'll look at going somewhere. And sometimes it's, it might be a record that I want to, I really want the band to be inspired, and I might take them somewhere cool. With one band I did, they were big fans of a lot of the records that were done at Rockfield. So I was like, right, well, let's go to Rockfield because it's going to make them all really excited. We didn't do the whole record there, but we did enough of it for them to be really, excited about making the record. So I mean, that's a reason as well.
There's something exciting about going to new studios as well.
Yeah, it's an event.
Find somewhere
and don't forget, even for us producers, it's like if you're in the same place all the time, it does get a bit, boring. You do want to go somewhere else.
We decided not to have a proper job, didn't we? So why would we want to spend
exactly.
in the same place every day?
Yeah, so it's like a little holiday.
It is. It's like, I think traveling and immersing yourself in other territories, music scenes, it's exciting. If you're in the band and you're hanging out somewhere in like Estonia or something, you'll get to know the place better because you're with people who know, because the bands all know the cool place to go and the best place to eat. And
at the end of the day, it makes it exciting for you as well, which you'll get a cool record out of that by doing that. So. And
I guess there's got to be some paybacks to spending 12 hours a day in the studio.
Yeah.
So you might as well try and get some enjoyment out of it too.
And when you're not in your own studio, you kind of do things a little differently, and you pick up new tricks. You're like, oh, that sounded cool when I did that, and that might be something that you do forever then, and so that's mainly for drums. I'll go somewhere because the room can really change. The guitars, you can kind of do them in a lot of in anywhere really, but drums is where I kind of decide, right, what room do I want, what sound do I want, and kind of go from there.
So I know this has been a bit of a bone of contention between us over the years. Do you want to talk about your recording format of choice?
Okay, so I use Steinberg Nuendo. Is anyone familiar with Steinberg?
Yeah.
Cool.
See how silent the room's gone?
Yeah.
else are you using? We go back. It became a long-standing joke, really.
Yeah, I think I photoshopped the picture of Nuendo next to you once.
You did, yeah. And I'd often phone up, have you bought a proper recording system yet?
I used it since version 1, and I really love it. And even to this day, Pro Tools is still catching up with it, with a lot of stuff. So there. No, I've just been using it since the beginning, and I'm really fast on it. And for me, I don't want whatever I'm using to be, a distraction. So I've never, I have Pro Tools in my studio for when I need it, but if something comes in on Tools, it gets taken out of it very quickly. It's.
Workflow is everything.
You can use anything.
I know we kid about it, but workflow is.
We're totally joke. We always joke about it, but it's whatever you're used to, whatever you're fast on, because you don't want to be kind of in a session and using the menu and trying to find this function. You want to just have the key command and you're done. It's done and it's subconsciously done. You don't even think about it, and that's why I use it, because just really fast on it and. If I was to I know Pro Tools a bit, but I'm not very fast on it, but I could either, spend some time learning how to be faster on Tools, or I can make another record. And
So
it's like,
I always remember going to a studio in Lithuania with Clint Murphy, and he it was like a beautiful studio. It was fantastic, and he flew in the morning of the session. I was there doing some seminars, and we had 3 or 4 days at this great studio out in the mountains. And he came in, and it was like obviously super fast on Pro Tools, just like shortcuts everywhere. We got there and found they were running Pro Tools on a PC, and of course all the shortcuts are different. I've never seen a man out of his comfort zone so much in my life. He was just sitting there sweating, looking at menus. It was, I was loving it. It was the funnest day I've had for ages, just watching his pain. I mean, by the end of the whole day, he was pretty good at it, but it was just the most, and a new studio, new room, new mics, new desk, and it was
one thing you're meant to be familiar with.
Yeah, the one thing he was like, and I was, because I was telling the band, oh man, he's so quick, and he's like, he's just like putting down, draw down menus, and it's like, it was just genius. But yeah, so the workflow is, maybe should have got Nuendo. Have you brought a Nuendo rig with you for this session?
I have, so I'll be doing my masterclass in it. But I mean, whatever I do in that is, it works in any. The DAW is just the way of getting it down. I mean, they all pretty much do the same thing.
And a crap guitar sounds crap on Nuendo and Pro Tools and tape, and it's like, and a bad performance is a bad performance on anything. It's the analogy I would use is like, you have a great guitarist who can pick up like a piece of crap guitar and make it sound amazing, and you can have somebody with the best gear in the world. Like,
at the end of the day, it's what gets me to work the fastest is what I'll use. Like, there are plenty of people who use Logic and stuff like that, and they might be quick at it, and it's the same. It's the same thing. It's just whatever you're comfortable with, and my main thing is just learn all the shortcuts on everything, so that you can do your session as fast as you can, and the art, you're not kind of you can do whatever you need to do, and then you're back and focused with the artist.
So you're one of the first producers I knew that was really religiously in the box mixing, and it was like I was quite baffled by that. I thought, why would you want to do that? And then and literally everyone else is called. I don't know a mix engineer who actually who doesn't mix in the box now. So it was like, and was it a struggle early on with like computer speeds?
Yeah, I mean, going back to what I was talking about before, where I was using multi-tracks and the mixing on a DAS to DAT and all that, there came like a transition point where the computer started to get a bit better, and you were getting sound cards where you could like kind of have more inputs, and it was really difficult at first to do the transition, because when you're on a console, I don't know, things are much easier to kind of.
So I couldn't imagine not mixing on the console.
So it took a while to find, and also you're talking about the early generation of these DAWs, so like the summing wasn't great on them, so like but after a while of doing it, and you found the sweet spots and like how to kind of, you know, get the mixes you wanted, it started to work. I mean, I could not live without it now, because a lot of the time I'm working on multiple records, multiple projects at the same time, and I'll get a phone call. I had a phone call a couple of days ago, and they're like, we need like TV mixes and we need these instrumental mixes. Now, labels these days won't really pay for you to recall a desk mix and stuff, but the fact that I can just go to a hard drive, click open, and the mix is exactly how I left it. That's like, I couldn't live without that amount of recall.
We were talking with Dave about it last week, that no labels are willing to pay for mix studio time anymore. It's just not in they won't even accept it as part of the budget. You know,
even to the point where sometimes you're in the middle of a session and you've got a client who desperately needs an instrumental mix. I mean, you're even in the ability that you can even just open that mix without even having to play it back, and just, if you're in a rush, you know, and you've got it, you know, but you couldn't do that with a desk.
And I think the demand of artists nowadays is everyone wants to be able to do recalls and multiple recalls. And it's annoying sometimes, but it's also, I think you can't bury your head in the sand with it. You've got to accept the fact that's the way that most artists work nowadays.
And a lot of my projects kind of overlap. So like, I might finish mixing a record and I'm starting tracking another one, but my mix feedback from the band still hasn't finished while I'm tracking the next record. So I will need to be constantly flipping back. Like once I get the mix revision from the band, if there's anything, while at the end of my day or something doing this new album, I'll have to open up this other session. So I'm opening so many projects doing different things. So the recall, I definitely couldn't live without it now.
So do you use sub in mixers or not? Is that something that
I've got an SSL Sigma, which is brilliant. It sounds amazing, and I sometimes use that. But a lot of the time, I'm straight in the box. I tend to, when I'm tracking, I use a lot of analog on the way in. So I kind of spend time getting the sound I want, and I don't think about it as, okay, I can EQ this later. I kind of want to be able to push the faders up on the DAW and it sounds pretty much how I want it to. I don't really use any summing box anymore. I use loads of UAD stuff, the plugins. They're amazing.
It's kind of be a real. I think all the die-hard desk mix engineers I know. Yeah. The transition point for them was the UAD plugins.
They just sound like incredible. The best plugins around. And that was a big game changer for in the box mixes as well.
Yeah. I think that's what converted a lot of people to in the box was the UAD.
Yeah, even to do this session, I brought my UAD host box, which runs on my plugins. Like I still take that around with me because it's so important to my workflow.
We should probably talk a little bit about the Bring Me the Horizon Royal Albert Hall gigs. I was watching a bit of this, you showed me some of the video of it today, and it's like, looks like a complete kind of mammoth project. I mean, obviously mixing in 5.1 is, it's a big departure for most producers who used to work in the stereo. And, how do you even go about, because it was, do you want to tell us a bit about the background to the project and about the amount of musicians involved? And
so my involvement with the band, I mixed their Live from Wembley DVD a while back, and they loved that, they loved that. And then I heard that they were doing this mad gig at the Royal Albert Hall with a full orchestra and choir, and I actually wanted to go to it, and then it sold out, and I didn't want to ask the band, so because like all their family would be going and stuff, and I was like, I won't ask. And then I was really gutted because I wanted to go, and then I get this email, and they're like, we're shooting this show, we want you to mix it. And I was like, okay, great. And then the next email was like, here's what we need you to do, and the first bullet point was attend the show, and I was like, great. So I went to the show and watched it because it was important, because it was, this gig was such a, so different to what they usually do.
Was it a one-off gig?
It's a one-off gig, yeah. So they're playing with, I think it's a 52-piece orchestra and 12-piece choir, and then the band. The difficult thing was, like, I mean, it's hard enough to get the power with a band like that in a live environment for DVD, let alone fitting a full orchestra and choir on top. It was really, I think it's probably the hardest thing I've ever mixed. Just for the volume of tracks, like all the orchestra is spot mic'd. The Royal Albert Hall is huge, so there maybe have been like 20 mics of like ambient stuff, and I didn't use them all, but it was a really difficult mix. And to let you in on a little secret, I mixed it once, and I took it home, and I was like, this sounds great, but it's not quite there. And I had two options, and it was either edit that mix and get it where I wanted to, or I was like, oh, you can just start again, just delete everything. And I deleted it all and went in fresh. But it was good because I went in fresh, and the first few songs, I just felt it all coming together really well, and and I love it, and I'm really proud of it.
And what did you feel was what was it that wasn't right?
I just knew it could be better. I just
Right.
like it's something. It's you listen to something and you get that feeling where it's good, but something inside you is like, there's another 10% or 5% here.
I've seen some of the automation. It looks
The
like
automation
like a
screen.
Stranger Things monster.
Yeah.
It's just like things everywhere.
And that was the hard bit about deleting and starting again. Like, I think I must have cried about that. It was a lot of work to delete, but I'm glad I did it because I don't think I could have edited that mix. You kind of, sometimes if something's not coming together for me, I just start again, and that's pretty much always the best thing. Or especially with mixing, if I kind of know in like half an hour if I'm going to get it that day or not, and if I don't, I'll do something else, and then the next day it'll work. It'll come together. So I mixed I mixed it and then did it again, and then I was really happy with it then. I mixed it to the picture as well, so I had them send me a rough cut of the video, because I think it's important with live DVDs that you go with what's on screen as well a little bit. So like, if you ever get to watch it at all, there'll be some shots where it goes to like the string player or something, and it's very slight, but there's a little ride on the strings just so that you have a connection with what you're hearing and what's on the screen. So that's probably why the automation screen is really nuts. There's loads of those little things happening. So we did the stereo mix, and then we had to do the 5.1 mix after that, which was actually not as hard as it sounds, because I didn't want the 5.1 to sound completely different to the stereo. So what we actually did was we took the whole stereo mix and we printed it into about 20 stems, or maybe a little more, but we stemmed it in a way that if you loaded all those into a fresh session, it would play the mix.
So we're using bus compression on all the stems.
The only thing I took off was the main bus compression. We did that post because it wouldn't work like that.
So we had this conversation with Dave last week about the Frank Ocean 7.1s.
Yeah, it's
like what to do with bus compression.
Yeah,
it's the driest discussion in the world, but it's kind of important.
Yeah, it's still a nightmare, but I mean, luckily there wasn't, it wasn't enough bus compression for it to be too painful, and we managed to dial it in afterwards. But yeah, so we basically printed it so that when we went to do the 5.1, when we pressed play, it played the stereo mix, and then from there we were able then to push what we wanted into the rears and move things into the low frequency and the center speaker.
So did you use much center speaker?
Not too much. No, we didn't want to put too much of the vocal in there, because it's really easy to isolate. You can actually just rip the vocal out then. Yeah. But I think it ended up sounding better, like having that phantom center. We put the bass, we put the kick drum, the bass guitar. There's loads of like sub effects that we basically ran into the low frequency. The one interesting thing that I did, like I wanted that 5.1 thing to sound like you were in the crowd. I didn't want it to sound like a comedy thing where like a guitar solo like spins behind you. You're watching this gig and like, you know, it's, so I wanted to just feel like you were in the crowd. So we had plenty of ambient mics around the Royal Albert Hall, but what I did was I still had the ambient mics in the front, but I used a Bricasti reverb unit, and we basically put on a really dark long reverb and sent those audience mics into the back, but mainly reverbed, but very, very dull. And then I also sent a kind of submix of the band into that reverb. So you hear a very dark, you know, just dark reverb sound behind you, so it feels like you're in the show. So we did that basically, and that made it easy to control, not make it sound too washy, and you couldn't really just put the rear mics of the thing in the backs because there's people talking. Right. You know, there's conversations. If you pull those faders up, you can hear like actual conversations.
Couples having arguments and stuff. Yeah.
There is one on one.
You fancy the singer of the band more than me, and all that stuff.
Yeah. So we did this trick in the end. Just basically using the Bricasti because it's amazing reverb and just making it dark so it doesn't sound spiky and you know like. And so it did like that, and it just makes you feel like you're in the show then. I mean,
it's interesting that you've got it. You know, I did a mixed film in 5.1 and talked to David about it as well. You start off with all these kind of things, visions of what you can do in another format, and then you realise that none of them work.
Yeah.
You know, timing becomes an issue, and it's like it just sounds. I remember I heard the Super Audio CD version of Dark Side of the Moon, and at the start of Money, all the tills kind of fly around the stereo, and it just it lost me. That's the end for me listening to anything in 5.1. It was just so novelty and so against everything the artist originally envisaged.
Yeah,
it was like it's just
I mean, that's again as well. You're watching a DVD, like the guitarist is not behind you. You know, he's, you know, so like you just.
How did you do any placements? So. Because you know, was the bass player off centre slightly?
No. I still kept the bass in the middle.
Because I've heard a few live albums, you know, especially some 70s live albums where you know the drums are here and the bass is slightly off centre where he's standing on stage and the guitar, you know.
That would drive me nuts.
No, I guess genre-wise is important. It's kind of,
I mean, especially with that DVD, the whole thing I wanted to get is I didn't want it to sound like a lot of DVDs kind of. With live shows, they kind of just have the ambient mics up really high and then the band is just kind of mixed under it, but I wanted it the other way around. I wanted the show to sound really clear and punchy and stuff like that. So there was, you know, you had to do a lot of automation with the ambient mics and stuff. But so it's important that, you know, it sounded like not like the record because it wouldn't be live, but it still has to have a certain sound to it.
I mean, what was interesting when I was watching and you showed me today on some of at the start of the concert where starts with the strings, and you actually kept the level of the whole band down until the first chorus of the first song.
Yeah,
so it was kind of quite a brave moment, but it is an amazing moment.
Yeah, well, it was. Again, that's something that happened when I redid the mix, because one of the big things is the first song is called Doomed. If you listen to it, you'll notice what I'm talking about. I wanted that first chorus, even when I went to the show, like when it came in, it made you jump out of your seat. And so what I actually did with the show is, before the band starts playing the first verse, there's like an overture with the orchestra. So that is actually, I don't know, like 4 dB quieter. The whole show, up until the first chorus, is like about 4 dB down. And then just before that chorus comes in, it goes up, and it just makes you jump. It's just really loud, and it goes with the shot. There's a big shot of the Albert Hall, and so like, it was just to create a dramatic kind of effect. It was an amazing moment. Just lots of white lights in the hall and shot from the back of the stage. A lot of those mixed things came from shots. You know, it was just.
So that was probably a fundamental difference between the two mixes, that were you keying off the visual?
Yeah, I always, with stuff like that, it's really important, I think, to. I mean, it depends what kind of thing you want to do, but for me, I really wanted the audio and the video to really go together.
Before we throw out some questions, should we have to look at a quick chat about mastering? Because, you know, it's, again, a really dry subject, but like really, really important.
Yeah.
I mean, I presume you've got some favourite master engineers you like to use, and also, you know, what you feel the role of the relationship between the producer and mastering engineer is. You know, are you a firm believer in the fact that that producers shouldn't master their own recordings? And you know, and just your general thoughts on the process, really.
I think there's a lot of ways to, you know, it's very dependent on the case. I mean, for me, I know kind of if when I mix a song, I know what I want that end thing to sound like. So I have a very good relationship with my mastering engineer, and he knows that I don't want a pile of EQ on it, and I don't, you know, I don't want it kind of compressed again. So I don't give him a lot of headroom, but that's because I'm confident I know where I want it to be. So he just does that last kind of little 5% and gets me a nice clear volume that he can do better than me, and he'll run it through some nice analog stuff, maybe not compressing it, but
who's your master engineer?
Alex Wharton at Abbey Road. He's really great. He did the Bring Me both DVDs as well. But he just, you know, I have such a good relationship with him that I don't even really need to speak to him too much. He knows what I'm after. But then that doesn't always work, because if you're either starting out or you're still learning, and you're in a room that you don't really know, or your room might not be that well treated, then you do need the mastering engineer to help you, because, you know, they've got a better room than, you know, they know their monitors really well, and they've got the skilled ears, and, you know, then you need their help. But, you know, it's two different situations. I think. One of the first things I do when I'm putting a plan together for a record and budgeting a record is decide on a mastering engineers really early on. So you know, that feeds into the process, so you know how much they're going to colour the sound. Yeah. And you know, I think a relationship with a mastering engineer is really, really important. Yeah, massively. You know, just also if you're in rooms if you go into another studio and you're not sure of the room, it's nice to have someone who can you just have a quick listen to this and tell me if there's any problems. And I think it's you know, I'm old school. I'm old-fashioned the way that I approach. You know, that I was brought up in an analog era, but you know, it's really important to have, you know, that extra set of ears. Yeah. For me, it's like and the idea of drag and drop mastering. It's just like, you know, just catch-all mastering. I appreciate there are budgetary implications, but I think it's such an important part of the process. Yeah. That it should be, you know, it needs to be factored in early on, not sort of, oh, I've done the record, I've run out of money, and now I need to get it mastered. Yeah. Which, you know, for me, it's the second or third thing on a budget. And it's not also that stuff as well. It's things that you kind of don't think about. It's like I did a record, which I'd actually mastered it because of budget reasons at the time. It's the band who I was talking about a while ago who just got a record deal, and now they wanted to do that album on vinyl as well. Right. And so the mastering engineer, who was just taking my masters and sequencing it, he called me up and he said, the mastering that you've done is great, but it's not going to quite work as well on vinyl. So then I got him to then redo it, because you kind of need the low end to be quite mono if you're doing vinyl stuff. Yeah.
It's really important to get vinyl cut. Yeah. It makes every time I've had it done, it makes such a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, you know, that's if you're doing a record that you know it's going to go to vinyl and stuff, that's, you know, you need a really good mastering engineer to kind of help you there as well.
Yeah. Let's just throw out a few questions and see if we can get some discussions going on. Luke?
With the live Bring Me album, did you get a say in like the mics they used live, or there's, you know, because obviously you're just getting spat out the audio files for it. Did they think about you much afterwards, or was it all just spit in what we want for live and you'll get what you get?
I was involved in the conversations, some of the conversations anyway, but the people who were recording it were a company who are very well experienced in doing those kind of shows, so I kind of left them left them to it, and
Was it all split feeds? And everything?
yeah, and obviously the band need to use stuff that they usually use because it needs to feed front of house as well. So I kind of let them get on. I basically said, give me what, I'll deal with it, and did it like that, yeah. But so I didn't really adjust anything mic-wise. I just got what just dealt with what I had. It
is a bit different. I went over to Havana and recorded the Manic Street Preachers show in Cuba, and half the gear hadn't arrived.
Oh, you remember you saying?
And I just had a big rack of Tascam D88s and no compressors, and a Mackie desk. So I physically had to ride all the gain controls for the whole gig. And there's one point, if you're watching the live DVD, a trumpet player appears that no one told me about. So this trumpet player hits, and it's just like all the meters just, and you can hear it just like, because I was talking to Gavin, the trumpet player, and he said, I've got to learn this song for like the Manic shows. I'm like, oh man, I'm really sorry about thinking. He goes, yeah, it's a little bit distorted at the start of that. It just hits the meters, and because there was half the multi. I had no way of playing back what I'd actually recorded, because all the film and all the audio had to go on the next plane out in case the local kind of mafia got hold of all the tapes and ransomed it. So literally there was a security guard waiting at the gig, so we just had to pile all the film from the TV thing and all the thing. One show, Fidel Castro's at the gig, so there's an unrepeatable kind of moment, and it was pretty hairy. We got through it, but it
was meant to be distorted.
Yeah, it was meant to be distorted. That's what I meant to do. Yeah. So, but recording it was a
I've been asked. I've had a couple of people ask, couple of like production companies asking me to actually do the live record side of it, and I just said no, because it's too much responsibility.
The compressors won't arrive when you'll be riding gain control.
Well, yeah, not just that. Like you need like a backup and then another backup, because if your sound goes down, there is no DVD.
Yeah.
That's the end.
I didn't have a backup because half the gear was still on a boat. So it was like, it was.
You're lucky, yeah.
I was really lucky I got through the night. I did drink a lot of mojitos after that finished. Smoked us a lot of cigars because I was so stressed out by the end of it. But we got through it. At the back there, you had a question? Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
This is not a technical question, but like when you're recording and you have a band, how do you deal with the ego of the band? Like, for example, the guys come in and that the arrangement will not work very well, but the guy's very sensitive with his song. How do you deal with that?
Just make your ego bigger than theirs. You just have, you have to kind of. There's ways of. I think a lot of what I do as a producer is probably the same with Greg. It's a lot of psychology, and.
It's 50%.
Yeah. It's working out how to deal with people and get the best thing. I mean, a typical example. I won't mention who it is, but there's a guitarist who I work with, an incredible guitarist, one of my best guitarists to record. But we always friendly arguments, but we always have a little bit of arguments between us, and sometimes instead of telling him what I want him to do, I'll just kind of, if I wanted to play something a bit differently, I might just be in the background with the guitar and hint an idea and wait for him to figure it out. And then he'll be like, oh, Romesh, you got this other way. But, all right, let's go. Let's record now. And, I've just kind of planted a little idea in his head. Things like that. I mean, you just got to kind of learn the person and work out, every band's got a kind of, one who's really in charge, and then a quiet one, and then one, maybe the singer does, needs a bit of help to push him and stuff like that.
There's definitely types. I think it's like the bass player is usually the quiet one who smokes too much dope, and it's like but there's also you have to you've got to learn to read groups of people, and it's like usually if a band walks in, the person who's the most cocky and most confident is probably the worst player in the band, and they're overcompensating, and you get to learn that pretty quickly.
To be honest, I kind of iron out a lot of these problems in pre-production. Like when I meet the band for the first time, I think the way you kind of represent yourself in that initial kind of thing kind of helps the whole
Yeah.
thing go smoothly. And usually in that pre-pro session, as long as the band's got their faith in you, those people with the egos tend to quieten down and kind of do what they're told.
I mean, those first meetings, whether it's actually in pre-production or like if you're pitching for a record, those initial contacts are really important. It's a really important skill set to learn.
Yeah.
Just to how to sort of like walk
Yeah.
into a room, make people feel confident that that you know what you're doing, and also make them feel part of the process. And it's like it takes a while to figure that out.
Especially like, I mean, I've had it's happened a bunch of times where I've been briefed in advance that the artist is pretty nervous or something, and so that very initial meeting is so important that you get it right. And if you get it right, then all their kind of worries and concerns just go away. So yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, there's also to bit of an extension from your question, but it's going back to the whole psychology thing and the ways to handle. I remember going to Germany and I booked this studio because it had an SSL, and that's my favorite desk. I love using it, and it's something I rely on a lot. And I got to the studio and I asked them to set it up in a certain way for me, and they were like, "We haven't used this desk in years." And I was like, "Well, we've got a very big problem here because I need it." And they didn't know. And I know my way around this desk really easily, but there was, for some reason, the mode I needed to put it into just wasn't working. But I had the client in the room with me, and I was panicking inside. I was like, "I need to get this working." But I didn't want my client to know about it. So I basically managed to manipulate the situation a little bit and get him out of the control room into the live room where my session band were like rehearsing. I said, "Go and, have a, just jam with them for a little bit." And as soon as the door shut, I was just like, fuck. I was on the phone to SSL. I was like, "You got to help me here. I'm stuck in Germany with this desk." And we got it fixed, and to this day the artist doesn't know anything happened.
Yeah,
apart from now, because it's probably
yes. Yeah, you got to know. Yeah.
But the importance of that was, if he had known I was panicking, he would also panic, and his trust in me would go. So he didn't know anything, and it was just like normal. It was a normal session to him. But some things like that you got to hide, because otherwise, people are going to lose a bit of trust in you.
I always use the sort of Hunt for Red October analogy, where the sailor comes to the captain, "Captain, the ship's blowing up, well, what are you going to do?" And the captain goes, "I don't know." And the salty old sea dog takes him to the side, the captain to the side, and said, "Doesn't matter what's going on, you've got to always seem like you know what you're doing. Never say you don't know what to do." And productions like that, you just got to it's fine, yes and no. It's back to the art of blag, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, and it's also even assist. If you're assisting, if you're going to be trying to assist in a studio somewhere, maybe some of you are, then if you do see something wrong, just whisper to the producer very quietly.
I mean, I should emphasise, the art of blag only takes you so far.
Yeah.
You will get found out really quickly if you don't know what you're doing, and you're not, and the end results aren't very good. So, blag to a point, but have a really great skill set as well. I think that's kind of I don't want to make it out so we're just complete chances, really. There's some more questions?
In your own studio, what's your vocal recording chain?
So mic-wise, there's a couple of things. I've got a U47 from Flea, which I love. That's probably my main mic I love. I also have their C12, which I also think is incredible. So I usually kind of go between those. I'll then go into usually a Chandler TG2, which is my favorite pre. And then I'll go into, depending on the vocal I'm doing in the song, but I usually go into a Blue Stripe 1176.
Why the blue stripe as opposed to?
Because I don't know, it just sounds
'Cause it's
awesome.
blue.
Yeah, it's blue. It's got a
on
stripe on it. It's faster, isn't it? It's better. It's just way better on vocals. It's got more aggression to it, but it's got aggression, but not in the way the black ones have, or the later revisions. So I use that, and then I just go straight in after that, really.
And do you use that compress or just hedge your peaks or squeeze them?
Not always. Sometimes if I want to hit something on the way in, I will do it. I'm not worried about it. As long as as long as you're confident on the sound, and it's, then I'll print. I mean, sometimes, it depends on the sound you want, really. If you don't want the vocal to be too compressed, I might just be using it just to control the peaks. But if I want an aggressive vocal sound, I'm not afraid to kind of do it there and then, because not only that, the singer's hearing that compression and it's making them sing in a different way as well. You get a kind of, I always think that the headphone mix you give the singer is like crucial. It's like, so if I want an aggressive vocal, sometimes I will go for it. I mean, I'm always thinking of the sound I want at the end as well.
Let's say metal, rock.
Yeah, I'll just meet as pinned. Yeah, you just got to be confident on the sound you want at the end, and But like I said earlier, a lot of what I do, I print on the way in, so I don't have to do too much afterwards.
I mean, if you have a really strong vision of what the end result's going to be, it kind of encourages you to commit to sounds anyway, whether it's guitar sounds, drum sounds, and everything interacts. Your bass sound will be dictated by your drum sound and guitar sounds. I think that's something a lot of modern recording is I found is deferring decisions. You get, it's like it's what we were talking about earlier about sort of lots of mics on guitars, and it's like I think the more you commit, have a finished kind of sonic image of what the song should be, and work towards that. Then it's kind of like you don't worry so much about committing to certain guitar sounds and certain vocal sounds.
I think it's also easier because if you've kind of got a sound, like take the guitar for instance, like I'll usually multi-mic the guitar cab, but I sum it all to one channel, and it's so much easier then to adjust the EQ of that guitar, and it's on one channel, than having 4 different faders and you're EQing this mic again and this one, and you're playing. You just got one solid sound that's good, and you just want a bit more top end, or you want to just boost. It's just so much easier.
You're not tempted to have like sort of maybe a sort of 57 and a Roy or something, and use the balance between the two mics.
I do, but I do that in the tracking stage.
Right.
So I do that balance there, and then if I want to do anything extra, it's usually a very small thing after that, because I've kind of done most of the work at the start. So.
Just be brave and commit,
Yeah, just think of the end sound, and don't be afraid to, I think if you start making those kind of bold decisions, you'll open a whole new world of sounds for yourself then, I think.
So how do you set a attack on the comparison? Too fast or
The attack.
somewhere in the middle?
I don't have it too fast, no. I have it fairly slow, like for vocals anyway. I really like slow attack. I used to be the other way around, but I love hearing that initial transient come through, and then I love that. So recently I've gone the other way around, and I like really slow, but then quick release.
Alex?
What's the point for you when you're like mixing or maybe working with an artist, like where you think like where he's talking about committing, but when you're talking to the track as a whole, you can say like, this is where we should stop, like, does that make sense? Like, stop working on it, stop continuing to mix it, because sometimes it feels like there's like endless tweaks.
I think a while ago I fell into that trap of like, where do you stop? But in the last bunch of years, I just go with my kind of gut instinct, and like when I don't spend very long mixing. I kind of, and in order to do that, my tracks are prepped really well beforehand. But I really don't spend that long mixing a track, because I basically, if you've got it prepped really well, you've got everything in the same place where it's used, so you don't have to be looking around a lot. But I just chase the sound that I want to make it come out the speakers, and once I feel it's in a place, I leave it then, and as long as it sounds as long as it sounds great. But I think I've stopped obsessing over the kind of little tiny things. You know, a lot of the time you do that and you lose the overall picture. And
I mean, do you find out that by endless artist tweaks of stuff, you lose the integrity of the mix? Because I find there's a point where you're making such fine moves, you know, 1 dB on a tambourine, a hi-hat this, and, you know, like this bit of guitar, and it's like, all of a sudden, what was really cohesive has suddenly disappeared.
Yeah.
Those tiny changes somehow can throw like the whole mix out of balance.
Yeah.
When you're doing like a back and forth, or like when you're mixing it yourself or whatever. Sometimes just being like, having that will to say like, no, like, this is it, instead of just...
Sometimes just sending the same mix.
So, yes, just
say, yeah, I've done it.
It's a classic producer trick for record labels. Rename the file, you know, even put their name in it. You know, recall and then put the A&R guy's name in it, and they're just happy as soundboys. Honestly, it's just they're just so pleased that it's like, and there's so much psychoacoustics involved in it. But artists are their own worst enemies as well, because there's that constant fine tuning. And it's like, I want more vocal. Oh, the guitar isn't loud enough. Can I have more guitar? It's never, can I turn something down? It's always, the mixers are always doing, it's, you know, it's the classic Deep Purple mixing in rock, you know, and they've all got their hands on the faders, and then the faders end up at the top, and they have to pull it down, start again, and this whole thing happens again. And it's, I think as a producer, you've just got to put your foot down at some point and say, look, but this all comes down to communication. I think you've got to have really good communication with the artist, so they know you're on the same wavelength as them. And it should somehow, you know, it should avoid a lot of, you know...
Yeah, I think if you're talking about mix revisions, is that what you're trying to get at?
Yeah, partly.
Yeah.
Like, definitely partly mix revisions. Also, sometimes with the production,
Yeah.
early on, sometimes people are like, can we put this into it? Can we put this into it?
Yeah, I kind of...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
We've got 10 maracas here, man.
That's just really like maracas, you know. So.
And then they get the harmonica master.
10 maracas, that's great. Yeah, I mean, you, as a producer, you've just got to kind of communicate that thing where, you know, for me anyway, you know, less is more. If you've got, especially with guitars, like sometimes 2 guitars sounds way bigger than 4, you know, because it's clearer. You know, you can hear those, you know, really defined, and when you have 4, sometimes it's a bit blurred. And
do you do much quad tracking on guitars?
I do quite a bit. Like,
but is it usually like sort of maybe like a
it's like a chorus,
like a Telecaster?
Yeah, like a
like
different tone. Yeah, something to fill a different frequency, kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think we've all done that thing at some point where you've just put way too much into a track. I definitely have. But you just gotta know, you know, or at least communicate with the band.
Yeah,
it's
so
too much.
and I don't know, I find then that side, when you get to the mix stage, you're just like, fuck, how am I going to fit all this shit in?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, like a funny story was when I was doing the Kids in Glass Houses album, Chris Lord-Alge mixed a couple of the singles, and when I got the mix back, I hated it because loads of stuff that was in the song, it was quite a, you know, it wasn't like a crowded arrangement, but there was a lot of little things that I'd kind of specifically done, and they weren't there, and I was just like, this, you know, this doesn't, I don't like this. And it took me to hear it in the back of a cab on my way to the studio, and I think Rihanna had come on the radio, and then after that, this song came on, and it sounded amazing. Because he just got the core things that song needed, and that was when I was like, okay, he's pretty good.
I remember. I mean, I think you got to accept with Chris. It's like, I remember, you know, he mixed some tracks for me, and I spent ages like trying to find these really cool room mics on the drums. And it's like, it's a really cool drum sound. You get it back, it's all gone. It's the Chris Lord-Alge drum sound, but it sounded incredible. And it's like, you know, and it's like, holy shit, I sound really amazing.
Yeah,
you know,
and it makes you look good then.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like, I mean, it's one of the reasons that I personally moved away from mixing, because you know, luckily with the man, it says, you know, I was getting like Tom Elmhurst and Spike Stent and Chris Lord-Alge mixing stuff. And it's like, fuck, I sound amazing. I sound really, really good now. And it's like, oh, maybe that's not all me, you know. But your name's on it as producer, and you kind of like, hey, you just but you want to make sure that your tracking's really good, and like, you know, so you're giving them stuff that's kind of like really well done. So it's
going back to what we were talking about like way earlier, and it was like, if you are sending stuff off to a mixer, you know, make sure it is good and it's not, and you're not trying to stitch them up, because at the end of the day, it's for you. You know, it's going to make you sound good.
Yeah, your credits are everything. That's your career, you know, and make sure you get credited for stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, that's a whole other thing. You had a question?
Yeah, just because your career's been so long-standing, I have to wonder if at any point during maybe the peak busy times, you ever had to deal with any kind of burnout, and if so, whether you got through that. I mean, hearing you talk now, you seem like a pretty mindful person. You seem like traveling around to different studios has helped you keep you fresh and creative on a project. But
My main thing is I don't work on the weekends. I don't do any recording on the weekends, and that's been a massive thing for me, because I think the kind of old school way of doing records is you work through the weekends, you work every hour, and that doesn't work for me, because you just get burnt out and you just start recording things for the sake of it. I work much shorter hours of the day because of that workflow I was explaining, where like loads of the editing gets done in the background. And then I always insist that the weekend's off. Like, it doesn't matter who the band is. Like, I always say it's, and because you need that time away to live your life and like do normal things, and then you come back on a Monday and everyone's excited again to hear what you did the last week, and even after that first weekend off, the band even come back and like, oh, I'm so glad we had that time off. And
yeah, because they just want to work, and then and then it's hard. You know, you got to concentrate so much.
Yeah.
It's really all consuming. You're working, even your short days is, you know, like 10, 12 hours. It's still a long day. I did love on dinner the other night that you credited me as coming up with that idea. And my wife looked at me with daggers, because she was the one who kept telling me don't work on weekends. And it was like, and for me it was a game changer as well, because it's like I would literally, because I'd have a lot of bands traveling from overseas to work with me. I'd felt guilty if I gave them 2 days, you know, so they come all this way to work, but then you do it and they're loving it. They're off looking at castles and going to the pub, and you know, and it's like, and like, it's actually quite a normal thing to do, you know.
It's like, you know, bands, you know, love, you know, if they're coming and they're working with me in Cardiff or something, and I give them the weekend off, that means pub, you know, they can go and
and there's a casino really near your studio.
Casino,
because bands get free food at the casino, don't
they do,
Not that I would encourage, you know.
But yeah, you know, that's how I kind of avoid kind of burning out. I mean, like, it doesn't solve everything, and then I'll take a break. I mean, one thing, I don't get to take a lot of time out during the year, because it's usually pretty flat out, but what I do, like Christmas, I take a long time off, and I always go every January. I go to NAMM, the music show in LA, because I like to geek out with all the new equipment that's coming out and stuff.
Because you've got to do the SSL stand, you just
I'm not allowed to talk. Well, you mean this year?
Oh no,
all right.
I've noticed you've done the SSL stand a few times.
I didn't do it, but I was when the Sigma came out, the Summing, I was actually the first person to have one. They gave me the first unit to, like, kind of, they did all their press on the back of that, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I did some stuff with them. I will most likely be doing something else with them, but I can't say what yet. But yeah, so I kind of use that as my kind of time off, and you know, this trip's been great because I've, you know, managed to go to Japan on the way here, and so it's been a nice...
Did a helicopter trip around.
We did,
this morning, and
then we ate loads of cheese.
Went to Mud Brick and drank wine and cheese, and then I fell asleep on the ferry coming back. I'm just such an old man. Do you got one more? Yeah, go on then.
You mentioned that you're using UAD. Do you think it's a real game changer or just a hype because it's too expensive, especially for home studios? Because you have free plugins, or for example, Waves, they are always doing special that you buy a plugin for $30, but for UAD you need to expend at least $1,500 to.
I genuinely think it's incredible. I think it's the closest it sounds to the analog kind of counterpart. Like, especially like, so the SSL bus compressor they have, I use that on pretty much every mix I do, and I've used the Waves one in the past, but I'm very familiar with the actual G compressor on those G series desks, and the UAD one grabs the transients in the way that I remember. I always think of the console doing that. So I know they're more expensive, but it is, it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
But Waves do amazing plugins, and they, I think right now there's like a really big sale on. So grab as much of that as you can while it's cheap as well.
I mean, it's like if you jump online and try and find some pictures of Romesh's studio, it's like it is kind of like a toy shop for musicians.
Yeah,
really,
there's a lot of stuff in there. Yeah.
I mean, do you think? I mean, is that because I was never a big gear person, and I would because I would travel a lot. I would always buy smaller amounts of gear, just like really essential things, and then just deal with what I had there. And I was always like, why do you want? And Dave Ringer's the same. Just buy masses of gear, and it's like, is it a security thing, or is it just like a,
it looks good, doesn't it?
It does look really great. It's, it's fantastic.
I like choice. I like being able to. It's the same thing as mentioned about the guitar sounds and stuff. I like to be able to go, that doesn't work. Okay, let's try this, and quickly find something. I just like having lots of different sound options, and even kick mics. I think I have all the kick mics that are available. I think I only use one of them.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But it's one of those things as well. It's like the moment you sell one bit of kit is the moment you'll need it. You'll want to use it. Yeah. So I just try to sell anything. I just like having loads of choice around, and it makes you creative as well. I think it makes you.
I mean, there's that new gear thing when you get a new bit of kit, you kind of like you just want to try and,
I
think it inspires you. Like
it inspires you, like
a
new guitar. Like you can, you'll write, you'll write great stuff on it. That first couple of hours you have it, you just get inspired.
I mean, is there just to kind of start wrapping things up? Is there any other career you've considered doing? Or any of the really shit jobs you've had?
I'd like to be a food tester on MasterChef. The person who gets to try all the food. That's about it. Nothing else.
Rad. Yeah.
No, I love I love what I do, and it's I find it very difficult to think of doing anything else.
Yeah,
I'm not very good at anything.
Because you did do a course for a while, didn't you? But you were too busy actually recording bands to.
Yeah.
But they gave you the diploma anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, I went to university and I did a sound engineering degree, but I was already doing, making records, but I kind of wanted the degree, so I just kind of, and I never went, just kind of gave the work in, but what's that? Just send them the record.
Yeah. Well, that's what you do, isn't it? You just send in the work you're actually doing. Yeah. I mean, there are some. I certainly wouldn't discourage anybody from like doing courses, recording courses, because there are some really good ones out there. Obviously, the SA course is great, and it's like, any knowledge is good. I mean, I'm only self-taught because there weren't any courses around when I was learning. I just literally learned by pressing some buttons and blacking my way through it. But it's like I think it's important to get the knowledge, but then sort of kind of bend it to your own will, and find your own ways of doing things, and being creative with the knowledge you've got, rather than kind of just accepting this is the way the compressor should be set, this is the mic I should use.
I think the audio schools are great, because you get a massive understanding of the technical side of everything and how everything works, but then things like these are really cool because you get to actually see how someone actually applies that stuff, and that's extra stuff on top that you can learn. But there's loads of audio schools around that are really good at giving you a really solid education in the technical side of it and all that.
Cool, man. Well, I think we could probably wrap it up there. So, firstly, I really appreciate you coming over and doing this. It's great to see you pass on knowledge to people, and I'm sure we got a great week with the guys from Villainy in the studio. Yeah. So it should be a really really interesting. We'll try and keep up to speed with any of the future ones of these we do. If you just subscribe to the Museum Producer Series Facebook page. I'll update it regularly so you can see. And also I'll put the seminar online as well so you can see it. Also, we'll put David Wrench's discussion, from last week up online as well in the next few weeks. And, thank you very much for coming, Ron, and big hand for Romesh Dodangoda. Thank you, sir. You can all go home now.